You're on mute.
All right, welcome to the, this is a regular monthly meeting of the Princeton Historic Preservation Commission being held electronically via Zoom on November 15th, 2021 at around 4 p.m. Pursuant to Section 13 of the Open Public Meetings Act, adequate notice of the time and place and agenda of this meeting has been noticed by transmitting a copy to the Princeton Packet, Town Topics, The Times, Trentonian, and by filing a copy with the clerk of Princeton, who has posted this to the municipal website, www.princetonnj.gov/meetings, pursuant to Executive Order 107, due to the state of emergency in New Jersey regarding COVID-19 coronavirus, notice that during the declared state of emergency, all regular and special meetings of the Princeton Historic Preservation Commission will be held electronically via Zoom. Such notices have been placed on the official bulletin board and at the municipal complex and on the Princeton website, and are maintained throughout the year. Okay, Elizabeth, do you want to do a roll call?
Yes. Ms. Capizzoli,
I'm here.
Mr. Shore,
I'm here.
Mr. Endersby,
Here.
Ms. Satterfield,
Here.
Mr. Shatskin,
Here.
Ms. Howard,
Here.
Mr. Pyle, absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for coming. So our last meeting is December 20th. And then Elizabeth, do you know, are we gonna keep going on Zoom or what's the deal?
I mean, I know that it's until the end of the year. David Cohen, I don't know if you've heard anything on what will happen in 2022.
We do not have a time frame for restarting in-person meetings yet. I know there's some sentiment that it should be happening sooner rather than later, but the health department is still recommending that Zoom meetings are safer than in-person meetings. And they're not recommending going to in-person meetings until vaccination levels increase more and positive transmission rates decline more. So I don't know if there's a specific target, but that's the current status.
Okay, well, thank you. Elizabeth, do you have anything else?
I don't. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, so we have minutes from October 18th, 2021. Does anyone have any changes to the minutes? And if not, does someone want to move to approve the minutes? And also to thank Justin for doing such a great job of taking minutes.
I move we accept the minutes of the last meeting, and Justin, thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there a second? Oh, thanks, Elric. So, all in favor of accepting the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you so much, Justin. Really, your minutes are terrific. Really, really good. Next is the resolution for recommendation of designation of Prospect Avenue Historic District. Frida, did you want to explain what the subcommittee decided?
Yes. So during the our last meeting, we decided that the text in paragraph 5, in clause 5, was as currently written, it was too narrow. And we felt that it didn't sufficiently portray the long and broad history, and I'm reading here our statement, and broad history associated with the proposed district. It focuses too specifically on only one essential but still insufficient part of it. And we felt that the language inadvertently interpreted the history of a district and long unrecognized local community as primarily a dependent function of the eating clubs themselves. We also felt that the language seemed to diminish the distinction and autonomy of a particular Princeton community, the Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood, whose rich and essential history should stand on its own and speak for itself. So we propose deleting clause 5 altogether and insert the following language in its place. Begin quotes, the recommended Prospect Avenue Historic District embodies many aspects of significant American and local history. It primarily involves and surrounds the clubs of Princeton University and the people who fostered, belonged to, worked for, associated with, and even opposed them over 17 decades since the 1850s, even to the present day. First is its distinct architectural history. Its grand buildings mostly represent a range of beautiful styles from the distinct period in which they were built, often romantically referred to as the Beaux-Arts period. There's also its important social history beginning in the mid-19th century, even before the current eating club buildings were built, when Princeton University students sought practical eating and fellowship alternatives to local boarding houses. This history continues through the early 20th century when then University President Woodrow Wilson and other faculty leaders sought to create a college system alternative to the eating clubs, then increasingly seen as unduly elitist, secretive, and separatist cultures within the university. By mid-century, increasingly problematic class ossification and racial, religious, ethnic, and gender exclusion within some eating clubs came to be criticized and challenged, even legally. New accommodations and alternatives resulted. The district's history, mirroring the country's history, has continued to evolve to the present day's far more diverse, accommodating, and open social culture. Of particular note and local interest throughout this history is the significance of Princeton area African-American service staff members at all the eating clubs, who should be acknowledged as the backbone of the club's success. As the cooks, stewards, and housekeepers for everyday club operations, their essential services given over most of their lives deserve special recognition and respect. The local Princeton history of the proposed district strikes many similar chords, both delightful and discordant, as composed much of America's social and cultural history. The arc of the architectural, social, racial, religious, gender, and class history associated with the proposed historic district represents a wide and broad sweep, which the HPC looks forward to seeing further interpreted, particularly with the help of local community group representatives, such as the Witherspoon-Jackson Historical and Cultural Society and the Prospect Foundation. So that's where that's what we recommended. And if there's any additional desired language, we open it up for discussion.
I mean, I know it's rather lengthy, but I feel like it's really important. And I know how long you guys spent thinking about this and addressing it. And, I fully support your language in this section. I feel like it sends the right message to the planning board and council that this is an important area of focus. So I just wanted to thank you for your work and, especially Shirley for, basically calling out this passage as being not adequate, because I think you were right. I think it really needed more clarification. So,
Julie, I have to say, Thomas Pyle actually flagged this initially, and he couldn't be here today. And I have to say, I've gained an entirely new level of respect for Tom, because he saw this. He could see through, how the language would have been interpreted. So I really, sorry, he's not here to hear me gush over this, but But he did a lot of work with even the writing of our proposed text.
Well, thank you. Are there other comments? And I'm opening this up to Clifford and Sandy as well. Hey, Clifford.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
So I'd like to thank Freda and Shirley and Tom for this input because I think it adds quite an important element about the significance of the district and the relationship to Witherspoon Jackson. I think it's a great addition. One very minor word adjustment is the very last sentence ends with it says the Prospect Foundation.
Mhm.
The official name is called the Princeton Prospect Foundation. So I think you earlier mentioned Princeton Prospect Foundation, but if you put that Princeton in front of it, that's the official wording.
Okay.
So a few weeks ago, Shirley very kindly shared with me several names, half a dozen names of people who have either worked in the district or who had relatives who worked in the district. And I contacted almost all the people on that list and had conversations with them. And based on those conversations, I added additional information to the section on the role of Black Princetonians in the district nomination. And also based on what Tom had said earlier, I also added information about Sally Frank's lawsuit and also about the what was called the Dirty Bicker of 1949. And so there's not a great deal of detail about those items because the detail can be found elsewhere, but I did add them to the nomination, along with adding a list of various people who have worked at the different clubs. So the full history of the relationship of Black Princetonians working on the district is still being discovered. So as we proceed, including through the planning board and eventually to council, as additional information comes in, I will add it to the text of the nomination.
And
But
there
thank you
is-
very much for adding that to the resolution.
And thank you for calling those people because as I told you, it's very important that these people be contacted to know who worked on the avenue. And my mother did also, so I'll give you some information about that.
Yeah, so I put your mother in there and it was actually very interesting, Shirley, talking to all the people. I had some very good conversations and maybe
Right.
you and I can talk about that a little bit more in another conversation.
Okay.
There's
Thank
a lot of history there and a lot of strong feelings and a lot of experiences. So thank you for reaching out to those people and giving me the list.
You're welcome. Thank you for putting it in.
wow.
It was more
Yes,
than half a dozen.
Well, there were half a dozen, I guess there were about 8 people on phone numbers that you gave me. And I think I contacted half a dozen.
Good, okay.
One didn't return a call, the other one didn't return an email, and one said I needed to go see him because his hearing wasn't good on the phone. That's John Broadway. And
Yes, that's
I
right.
haven't had a chance to go see him yet, but I will.
Right, yeah. So whoever didn't respond, let me know and I'll call them and tell them to get in touch with you.
Okay, that would be great.
Okay.
All right, Sandy, you had to comment.
Thank you. So from Princeton Prospect Foundation's point of view, we definitely support the substance and the spirit behind the revised proposed amendment to the resolution. I think it captures what you were talking about. And I think it's fair to say that when book on the eating clubs was prepared, the focus was on the architecture and the origins. And since that time, through feedback and just time, this building, adding to that and understanding the the cultural socioeconomic aspect of the clubs, what went on in the 1900s, what we're talking about here and in other ways is really important. And we actually incorporate some of that into, for example, the public tours that we go into the clubs and public talks now, whereas initially that was pretty minimal, but we add that to that. So it's really an evolving understanding of the history. And I think it's good that it sets it in motion in a formal way. So those are my remarks. But Cliff, you've got the best person in Clifford too. I've worked with him for 4 or 5 years now, and he is just so good at understanding it and documenting it. So I think the town is very lucky to have him.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
Mom.
Yeah. He did not pay me to say that.
Well, excellent. Are there other comments? Yeah,
Yeah.
Roger?
Yeah, I like it. I had a couple of minor wordsmithing things. In the third word should probably be the rather than its. First, and at the end of that paragraph, I guess it's implied in the last sentence, the district's history has continued to evolve. The present day is far more diverse, accommodating, and open social culture. I think it's implied, but I would make explicit with a short sentence saying this evolution is ongoing, just to make it clear that we're not at an end point.
Mhm.
And finally, in the last paragraph, the second line, instead of as composed much of America's social and cultural history, I would change it to in reflecting, perhaps. As composed just sounds a little awkward to my ear. Again, it's a wordsmithing choice. So,
Thanks, Roger.
you're welcome.
Those seem like reasonable changes to me.
Mhm.
Any other comments? If not, Elizabeth.
Not to the new text, but just the certification that we should change the date to 15th day of November, which is today.
Okay, good idea.
Mhm.
All right.
So if there's nothing else on the resolution language that we've just discussed, there have been some, there's an agreement between the university and the Princeton Prospect Foundation that's going to involve moving 2 buildings. And so the updated nomination has an adjusted boundary map, and then it has a map from the university showing the relocation of the buildings. So with the, if the resolution language discussion is finished, we can take a quick look at those if you would like to.
Oh, does that change the wording in the resolution?
No, there's
Or-
a new map because since the planning board had approved the
Right.
relocation and the retention of the other 3 Victorian houses, that the district line was changed. I think that's what Clifford would like to share with the rest of the HPC.
Oh, sure. So that would be part of this approval of the resolution would include the updated map.
Right.
Okay, well, if you want to share your screen, just so everybody sees it.
Okay. That didn't work, did it?
Um,
Can
Well,
you
it's
see
almost
my
there.
screen?
There's
No.
screen.
Oh, here it
Yes, now
is.
we can see it.
See it.
Can you see the map?
Yes.
Okay, so this is the boundary map. You see it's updated October 14th.
Mhm.
And the only difference between this map and the previous map is that this particular lot right here which is currently 91 Prospect Avenue. And it's lot 17 on this map. So that was included in the previous map, and it's been taken out of this updated boundary because the university, as I think everybody here knows, is going to take the court clubhouse from this location and move it over here. And we'll look at that in a second. As part of the agreement with the university and the Princeton Prospect Foundation, the university agreed to support the designation of this as an historic district. And as part of that, they asked to remove that lot number 17 from the district boundary because it will no longer have an historic building on it. It'll have a new building, probably not for at least a year or 2 years. So that's the adjustment on the map. And then this is the, let me see if I can reduce this. This is the, it's not letting me reduce. This is the other side of, this is the north side of Prospect. So currently, here's the building at number 110 that is currently located over here. So this would have been, or the current conditions have this 110 Prospect over here, 114 and 116, and these are commonly referred to as the three houses. And so the compromise is that the university is going to move Court Club over here, and you can see Court Club in the new location, and then it's going to move 110 Prospect behind the other two, 114 and 16. And the Princeton Prospect Foundation has been in discussion with the university and the planning board about number one, the landscaping in front of the moved Court Club, and also the landscaping here and the visibility of 110 behind. There is precedent for this not very far away from here in town, where in the 70s on William Street, the university relocated 4 houses that were on William Street, and they're now located behind the building where Thomas Suite is located. And so we do have precedent for doing this before. And so the boundary around here, you can see in this orange color, is not any different than the previous boundary. It still has the same lots, but it's going to have Court Club here, and it's going to have 110 over there. And we've also been in discussions with the university about the landscaping in front of the new pavilion that's going to be built. And Elizabeth has been very helpful on both of these issues. And she raised some very important questions about the landscaping here. And the university has agreed to take a number of steps, one of which is they're considering a low brick wall that would be somewhat similar to some of the brick walls further up the street. And they've agreed to have lawn in the front area as opposed to the previous plan. And then they've also agreed some details to lessen the visual impact of the walkway over here. So that's an ongoing discussion, but we're pretty confident that with Elizabeth's input and with the expertise of other people in the planning department, and with the university's openness to dialogue about this, we're pretty confident that we're going to get a pretty good outcome of the landscaping. And of course, we would have all preferred to keep Court Club in place, but this was a compromise that saved all 4 buildings. And we were at one point looking at the demolition of Court Club, and we were looking at the possible demolition of the 3 houses. So in this compromise, all 4 of them are going to be saved. But in terms of the resolution, it probably doesn't need to go into all that detail. I did mention this move in the updated nomination text. And as long as the resolution cites this map dated October 14th, that probably, I would leave it to Mr. Schmier and the commission, but that might suffice in terms of a description of what the university is proposing to do. Does
Okay,
anybody
thanks.
have any questions on any of this?
Well, let's hear from Ed on whether or not this should suffice to help with the process. I guess
The
we
answer,
could,
Madam Chair, is yes. In other words, with the changes that Elizabeth and I have tracked, and we have them, and then we would make a reference and I'd probably attach a copy of this October 14th map as part of the resolution, and update the resolution, of course, to today's date. But I think that would be sufficient. So if the commission is satisfied with that, a motion to adopt the resolution as amended, and then we'll clean it up tomorrow and get it out.
oh, that's fantastic. Okay, so with that, yes, Roger?
Just had a quick question. Clifford, the boundary includes the wall in front of the Amlinger Center?
Yes, and the
The gate?
wall and the gates are, we've identified those as very important. And yes, they're within the boundary, and they're also mentioned in the resolution. You can see how the boundary line here is pulled back from the actual frontage. So it's meant to include the wall both here and on this side.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Oh, and by the way, Roger, thank you for your earlier comments at, I think it was 2 meetings ago, which were also very helpful, I think, in the discussion about, the social history. Thank you for those.
You're very welcome.
All right, so with those changes, is there a motion to approve the resolution as amended?
So
Okay.
moved.
Oh, thanks, Roger. And the second? I think Elric was seconding. Okay, so I guess we'll do a roll call.
Ms. Capizoli,
Yes.
Mr. Shore,
Yes.
Mr. Endersby,
Yes.
Ms. Satterfield,
Amen.
Mr. Shatskin.
Yes.
Isn't Miss Howard, isn't she voting?
I think that you said that you didn't hear from the mayor yet about moving her position. So should I include her? I don't know.
I think we should.
I
think we should.
believe, Elizabeth, that anytime you have even a single full member absent, an alternate can take their place. You
Oh, is
don't
that-
have to need the alternate for a quorum.
I see. Thank you. Ms. Howard.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, just so you're on the record there.
Right, thank you.
Well,
I
thank you
appreciate-
very much. This has been a delight working with all of you on this. Every one of you contributed in some way to this effort. And a special thanks to Elizabeth and Freda and Shirley and Tom and also Roger. So, and Elric shared an image showing the fact that 116 Prospect was almost certainly built from a pattern book, and I added that to the nomination as well. So thank you very much. We'll look forward to working with any of you as we proceed to the next steps on this. It'll be
All
really,
right,
I think a lot of people in town will be pleased to see this historic district in place.
absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Really, really appreciate it.
You.
All right. So, thanks again. So, and thank you so much to the subcommittee. really, really important work, and it is a much better resolution now.
Was a
So
pleasure. Yeah.
Yes, pleasure.
So for our applications, our first application, 974 Mercer Road, Bruce and Marcia Wilsey had some trouble with noticing. And so Ed, the verbiage is that their application will be carried to our December 20th, 2021 meeting.
Well, Madam Chair, no, we don't have to carry it because we can't accept jurisdiction yet. So they're going to renotice and then they'll just go on the agenda for the 20th. So there's no action other than you announcing that we're not going to hear it tonight and it'll be heard at a later meeting, and then we can take jurisdiction.
All right, thank you very much. All right, so our next application is Princeton International Properties, 4042 Nassau Street. I was wondering if Justin and Elizabeth could bring over the applicants.
Yes. Let's see,
Don't you mean 4042 Tulane?
North Tulane.
What did I, sorry, Tulane, I'm sorry. Well, I don't know why I said Nassau. I think it was,
We knew what you meant.
yeah, it's clearly Tulane. Okay, I see Marina and I see Ryan. Anyone else?
James is in. Ryan, I think that's all.
Yep, I believe so.
Thank
Thank
you.
Okay, great. So welcome again, 4042 North Tulane Street. And Elizabeth has a report, and then Derek and Jim also did a report, and maybe you could just summarize their points.
You mean the engineering and zoning report points?
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, not the whole, you don't have to say the
I
whole report,
understand.
just the highlights.
I think probably the best thing to do is just kind of give a little bit of update. So this application came in as a minor site plan with no variances, and I'll defer to Mr. Kennedy if I get this wrong, because I know that he was involved more than I. They were scheduled for SPRAB, which was last week. I believe it was determined pretty last minute that there were some variances that were identified. So within this report, they did an update. And I'm just going to go and state what they are. And they're mostly highlighted. It talks about the fact that the applicant should address affordable housing overlay requirements for the 20% affordable residential units. There is a variance required for maximum front yard setback. There is a variance required for bicycle parking requirement. And although that the application does not require stormwater management, that they do make suggestions. I think that they further talked about they require the bicycle analysis. They'd like some information on the sanitary sewer demands and overhead utility service. And any signage they would like the applicant to come back to the zoning officer. Ryan, was there anything that you felt that I kind of left out? That's kind of a quick summary.
Yeah, Elizabeth, thank you. I think that's accurate. Ultimately, of those two variances that were noted, you'll hear a little bit more about them. One, for the bicycle thing, that was something that just nobody saw, and the applicant will not be seeking a variance for the number of bicycle spots. It's just that ordinance is very new, and nobody noticed that it had a specific calculation that our plan was different from. So we will be complying and not seeking a variance for that. It's just the number of bicycles and the location of short-term versus long-term storage. On the setback was a bit of a surprise to us, but we'll yield to the zoning department's interpretation. As you'll see, the existing building is 9 feet away. And that's how we did our calculation. For the affordable housing overlay zone 1, there is a minimum and a maximum. And I guess it seems that they're actually, the interpretation is to test the minimum, which is 10 feet, or excuse me, the maximum, which is 10 feet, I guess at every point along the building, and we were only testing it or designed it for the existing part of the building. So I guess we will be asking for a variance for that, but that was a kind of an interpretation that came up literally the morning of the SPRAB hearing, which planning canceled last week. So, yeah, I think Elizabeth got that right. Thank you.
So I have a question in terms of process, because we're advisory, we are writing a memo to the zoning board then, is that correct?
Well, I think it'll be planning.
Planning,
This
yes.
is whether our interpretation of that setback requirement wins out or planning and zoning's view of it, to test it at every point. Ultimately, it's a minor site plan, likely with one variance, we'll see, and that will go to the planning board.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to clarify that that we are advisory on this, and so we'll be just collecting comments on the project that we'll pass on to the planning board. And with that, Elizabeth, did you want to go into your memo a little more?
Yes, and I do want to just mention to the HBC that it's very similar to 21 Wiggins, which they saw last month, where the property is located in the recommended Central Residential Historic District, which again, HBC served as advisory because it was in a recommended district. And I believe that one was also in the Board of Jurisdiction of the Planning Board. So similar case as it is here. Okay, so the applicant Princeton International Properties, as mentioned, they filed for a minor site plan application to the Planning Board for a mixed use development. And the project site is identified as block 27.02, lot 47 in the Princeton tax map of the former Princeton Borough. It is also known as 4042 North Tulane Street. The property is in the residential business district and the affordable housing overlay zone 1. The applicant proposes to redevelop the existing building on the property by adding on to the building and providing 2,500 square feet of office space and 14 residential units. The residential units are going to be 1 and 2 bedrooms, and there's going to be 1 3-bedroom unit. And some of the units will have balconies. As mentioned, variances are required, and as our understanding, the applicant is going to update their application to provide what variances are required prior to going to SPRAB and to the planning board. The property is situated on the west side of North Tulane Street near the corner of Spring Street, and it contains 0.216 acres. It falls in the suggested Central Residential Historic District of the Princeton Historic Residential element of the master plan. Again, as talked about, it is in the jurisdiction of the planning board, and HPC serves as advisory. So a little information on the background here. So according to the 1906 Sanborn map, North Tulane Street, South Tulane Street, Lincoln Court, and Spring Street are seen as being created, and the lots up front is being subdivided, although at that time there were no properties developed. By the 1918 map, 4042 North Tulane is seen as the only property that was developed on the west side of the block. And at that time, the building is shown as 2.5 acres, 2.5 stories, side-by-side residential dwellings, which have almost identical footprints. They were constructed in brick with a slate and tin roof. Each dwelling had a covered side porch, and there was a small 1-story frame rear construction, which was seen on both the buildings. The unit on the right, which is referred to as 42 North Tulane and continues to be identified as that, had a small covered porch, and 40 North Tulane had a slightly larger area that was enclosed. So currently the property on the building is still a side-by-side 2.5 stories, 2-bay building with a cross gabled roof, which is clad in asphalt shingle. The building provides commercial and residential use on the first floor, and on the upper 2 floors, it is used for apartments. A driveway can be found on the north side of the building, which gains access to a multi-bay masonry garage structure, which is in the back of the building, and there's additional parking. Unit 42 North retains the original style and features of the building, including the side porch that has a hip roof. Alterations are seen more on 40 North 2 Lane, which includes a 1-story addition on the west and east elevation on the first floor. The original side porch was removed and an addition added to that side. And on the front of the building, a partial covered and enclosed front porch was added in addition to new steps and a door centered on the front facade. All windows appear to be 1/1 double hung replacements. The fenestrations on the unaltered front and sides of the building are symmetrical and aligned between floors except those under the original side porch. There are 2 windows in the attic under the gable roofs. So as mentioned, so this 2.5-story building is going to be enlarged to a 4-story building. So it originally started at 37.8 feet and it's going to grow to 44.7 feet tall. It'll ultimately have 6,208 square feet of space. And the redevelopment of the existing building is going to be created by demolishing the building, except for the facade, on 42 North 2 Lane. So they're going to keep that facade, but they're going to demolish everything behind it. And they're going to add on to the floors above that original height. In addition, the additions are going to be added to the north and west of the building. The front porch will now become fully enclosed and a new door will be centered on that facade. The expanded second floor to the north and to the west are going to create a covered parking area for new 9 surface parking spaces, one of which is going to be handicapped. Amenities for the development include an elevator, a staircase system, residential lobby, bike room, and recycling trash area. The driveway will continue to exist where it is using the existing curb cut. New driveway apron is going to be installed and the width is going to be 20 feet. There is a small sidewalk in the back to provide access to the bicycle storage, which is going to be a concrete walk. But there's going to be no curbing within the parking area. Existing fences are picketing at various heights, and they're located on the north and west property lines and portions of the south. There's going to be a new 6-foot board-on-board fence installed along the rear property line and a new 6-foot privacy fence on the ends of the northern parking spaces. Recessed lighting is going to be mounted under the existing front porch and the new entry. And then they will be louvered bollards 3.5 feet high with 100-watt cutoffs, which are going to be installed on the side of the driveway entrance and the rear yard. And I'm going to leave the distance between the buildings to the applicant. There are 9 existing trees on site that are 7-inch or greater caliper, and all of those are proposed to be removed. I can come back to the landscape later if we want to, because that's really just talking about a new foundation planning in the front and screening along the sides of the building and the rear yard. Again, the application is a recommended district, so the HPC will make their recommendations to the planning board. To go to the comments, again, the applicant is to confirm that they meet the requirements of the AHO-1 Princeton overlay zone. And then according to the affordable housing overlay regulations for overlay 1, it states that the district contains properties with buildings that are eligible for designation as a historic building or as a contributing structure within a planned historic district. Furthermore, utilization of the AHO-1 regulations of the following properties requires the retention of the street fronting buildings in existence at the time of the adoption of this ordinance on the following properties that are located within the AHO-1 zone. Only those proposals that comply with this requirement shall be permitted to develop pursuant to these regulations. So my interpretation is demolishing the structure at 42 North 2 Lane Street, even though they keep the front facade, is actually altering the current appearance. And it's actually not in keeping with these regulations because it doesn't actually talk about retaining the facade, but it talks about retaining the building that faces the street. So I think that that's going to be a discussion that should take place here. And I think that probably Councilmember Cohen can also give direction on that. But I think that that's very important because when they are removing a pretty significant part of the existing building, which actually 42 North 2 Lane is the duplex that actually is more in keeping and more historic. It's had less alterations than the one on 40. And to be able to remove the side porch and removing the cross gable roofing, and then just putting a new addition is really going to alter that historic building. It's not going to look like a duplex anymore. And it's also going to alter the character of the streetscape. And I think that if the applicant is able to make these changes, that they should take into consideration the proportions, the height, and the way it's viewed from streets like North 2 Lane and the eastern end of Spring Street, which kind of has more of a residential character, versus if you're looking down the hill from South 2 Lane and maybe the western end of Spring Street, which again is more commercial. So if there's any opportunity for the applicant to move the taller addition to the rear of the property, which is adjacent to the commercial adjacent buildings, I think that would be more appropriate, and it would preserve the streetscape and also be respectful of the 2.5 high properties that are adjacent across the street to kind of retain the streetscape. And in light of that, I guess, I'm looking to see how is it that the project can still really function well, perhaps reduce the area that they're proposing. I noticed that there is a large area that's actually dedicated to a stair system, a new stair system that goes to the new residential units, in addition to the new unit that's going to be in the space that was 42 North 2 Lane. And if there's an opportunity to maybe consolidate those two staircases into one, I think that would help reduce some of that required square footage that they're using. There's some other things that I would like the applicant to address. There are two unidentified roof lines that are shown on the east street side elevation and a tower which is shown on the south elevation. And it's really unclear when I look at the floor plan what that is. And if they could kind of give a little explanation for that, that would be great. There's also on the north and south elevation drawing, there's an angled construction below the street facing second floor balcony. If they could address what that is. And I think that there's also a little bit of inconsistency between the architectural engineering drawings as far as what is being retained and what's being demolished. There are also proposed metal bollards in the back area of the parking, and just asking if those are necessary. It's not as if it's backing up into anything besides lawn area. So just seeing if those are even necessary. There's also privacy parking on the west end of the north parking space row. And again, wondering, is that necessary? Because there is also a fence on the rear property. So just wondering if, that's redundant, or if the other one is not in good condition or it's visible. As far as the landscape goes, I know that there are areas that are dedicated for the espalier climbing hydrangea, and wondering if some of those or additional landscape could be augmented on the east side to provide a little bit of landscape relief for the residential neighbor next door. And it's also recommended that additional large trees be planted where possible to mitigate the impact of the mass and the height of the new development. HH, which is one of the plants identified, I couldn't find what that was on the plan schedule. There are 4 bollard lights proposed in the rear yard, and just wondering if those are necessary. I think the only area that requires lighting outside of the parking area might be that walkway to the bike storage, and perhaps the lighting could be placed on the building that with the illumination down or underneath the ceiling area of the covered parking area. And also fencing should be identified on the drawings and the ownership of them. Some of the location of the existing fences kind of go on and off the property, and just, you know, to confirm which ones are the applicants and which ones can they remove, and are there other ones? If they are there, and if there's a duplication again, can we eliminate it to just one that is sufficient? Any roof condensers, if they're visible from the right of way, it's recommended some screening be provided. And then there's just some questions for the applicant talking about perhaps the material and color of the new addition, if there's any color changes to the existing building, if they could address also lighting for the balconies. The plans do talk about future solar panels, and I think HBC is all for sustainability when possible. And it's not intrusive to the historic character or the district. Just wondering if those solar panels, why they are future, are they not going to be part of this application at this point? Is it coming later? And is there opportunity for perhaps more solar panels or green area on top? It seems like there are some low profile roofing, and perhaps if that was considered. And that's all I have, Madam Chair, unless there's any
All
questions.
right. Well, thank you. I'm going to turn over to the applicant. Is it Marina? Would you be answering a lot of these questions, or Ryan?
You guessed right, Madam Chairwoman. Likely will be Marina, and I think she's the one who can, if it's all right, share her screen.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, thank you as always, and everyone for the comments on this. This was a lot of work, and interestingly, you know, we've been, we're starting to get comments back. Some of these issues are, you know, things I think we can explain pretty easily. You know, for example, just a reminder, you know, this is the affordable housing overlay. We will be providing 3 affordable units here. That's the point of this district, and then we're excited to you know, get that done for the town, including, you know, the only unit in here that's 3 bedrooms is one of the affordable units. So that's really just a great, we think a great thing, and you know, that's what the reason for this overlay was, to keep a set of existing buildings and to encourage density in this area. You know, there's a place, part of this lot that was a parking lot is going to get development, and you know, we heard what the town was looking for with this ordinance, and we hope everyone will see that that's what we're trying to deliver. You know, the density and the units that the town is looking for in certain parts of the municipality. So we do have Marina Rubina, our architect, and Jim Kamalik. This is a site plan after all, our engineer on the line, you know, with any questions. Some of the things on Elizabeth's list in particular, you know, ballards and lighting and that kind of thing. We'll get to it maybe towards the end with Jim can answer those questions and walk us through that. But perhaps we'll start paging through this and I'll, you know, hand over to Marina to, I'll say introduce herself, but you all know who she is, and work with her quite a bit. So I'll have it be a short reintroduction.
Thank you.
I think you're looking for the view tab, Marina.
I got the mute button hidden somewhere. Okay, I think I got it. Good evening. Thank you so much for hearing this application today. I am very excited to be here and tell you about this project that I find particularly exciting. And in particular, as Ryan mentioned, this is an affordable housing overlay zone that was created as part of the Princeton's affordable housing settlement to satisfy the unmet need calculation from the former borough, which as of the report that was prepared at the end of 2019 is 195 units, which is very exciting to be contributing to satisfying this unmet need. So the existing building.
Marina, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you do a full screen view of the,
I can try if I
If you
lose
go,
my.
if you go to the
I
slideshow
know
tab,
how,
Marina.
but then I lose my Zoom buttons. Does that work? Okay, all right, let's try that. Hopefully it won't jump ahead of me. Right, so the existing building has ground floor office and two residential units above. The proposed use will be ground floor office and overall 14 residential units. As Ryan mentioned, 3 are going to be affordable. There are 9 parking spaces, and the overall impervious coverage on the site will be reduced by about 400 square feet. So I don't know if you could see this, but what we tried to do is clarify some of the things that are mentioned in the report that Elizabeth issued. So this is the overlay of the Sanborn map and the existing survey, which shows the red outline is the existing outline of the building, and the pink is the original building as it is shown on the Sanborn map. I am not able to state whether the existing building is indeed the building that was originally shown on the Sanborn map or not, but this is just the overlay that was put together. I put this together based on aligning the property lines, and you see there were some interesting modifications that were done to the property lines. The other clarification is there currently is no residential uses on the ground floor. It's purely office. Another clarification that we would like to make is that there is a statement that the redevelopment application is demolishing 42 North Tulane. That is not an accurate description. There's no separate 42 Tulane and 40 Tulane. This is one building built as one structure. There is no, it's not a separate something. It's just a unit has its own number. So what we're proposing doing is the side facing south, and this would be, let's see, the street facade are completely remaining, and most of the work is concentrated in unit 42. And most importantly, in the front, what we need to do is we need to lower the floor in order to be able to enter the lobby and enter the units, the existing stairs. So there's going to be a portion of the floor lowered so that the residents of these units that are going to be basically extending the existing stairs to get down to grade. And then this portion of the building upstairs remains, and the addition butts up to it. And then there's another clarification that the existing porch will be fully enclosed. The existing porch is partially enclosed and partially open, and the new porch is proposed to be fully open. There's no glass enclosure. It is fully open. Let's see if I can figure this out. Yeah, so here we have some existing pictures that I think we submitted as part of our package. So this is from South Tulane looking down. You could see there's the building. This is the building from the corner of Spring Street and North Tulane. And as you turn the corner and proceed on North Tulane, here are additional views, and you can see the Spring Street garage in the back. This is the existing survey. And I don't know if Jim would like to say anything about this in particular, because this is his drawing, but basically this is the existing building footprint. And we enter the parking lot, existing parking lot, which the existing driveway remains in about the same location. And again, as we stated earlier, we're going to be reducing the impervious coverage by about 400 square feet. Jim, do you need to add anything?
No, I think you covered it. Just that the we have that masonry garage at the rear as well. And we're going from open parking to covered parking underneath the building.
Right. Thank you. Okay, so to walk you through the ground floor plan as in response to the calculations provided by Jim Purcell from the engineering department. It sounds wonderful the way he calculated it, and we have revised the arrangement of bicycles in the bike room. And we will also be providing short-term bicycle parking along the street. So this is the long-term bicycle parking undercover in this bike room. And then here is the outside bike parking. So we are proposing new 9 parking spaces, and we are saying that they're going to be future EV charging stations. We're going to be wiring for all of them. So 8 out of 9 will be wired for them. And as soon as we're able, depending on various state programs and funding availability, we'll start putting them in as soon as possible, but we can't promise they will be done right at the beginning when the building is done. So that's why they're called future.
And for those of you on the board who have been following the new statewide ordinance, I think the new word for that is make ready for those spaces. So we're, complying with the state ordinance, and they'll be easy to put in once the need is there, or even before.
Yeah, and we're very excited to be providing this. This is clearly the future of parking, and hopefully these EV chargers will be tied into the solar panels. So we're very excited about that. Then as we move upstairs, on the second floor, we have, so the existing units that are located in the existing building, they're multi-story units, so they have internal staircases. And then the new units that we're proposing are flats. So there's a 2-bedroom unit, 1-bedroom unit, 2-bedroom unit, and a 1-bedroom unit. And the idea here is that they're all oriented in a way that provides them as much as possible light and privacy. So people have their own outdoor spaces that are private as much as possible. And the difference, the third floor is very similar layout. The only difference is that the second floor of the existing units is obviously different. And then as we move to I am lost, this is the 4th floor, right? Last count here. So the existing building no longer has units, but we do have a bedroom here that faces the street. And then the new units are oriented very similarly to the ones below. And then here's the roof plan. Again, what we're showing here is the solar panels are called future solar. Again, we are very much committed to putting them as soon as possible, but it really depends on when funding and incentives are available. So we don't want to be held up in case they're put, a little bit after the building is ready. So the intent is to put as many solar panels as we're able as soon as possible. Let's see. So here we are in the elevations. So this is the existing building right here, and this is the existing office, and the porch remains completely open. And what we're proposing is modifying the roof of the 1-story portion of the building to plant a green roof. And this, what'd I do? Oops. Jim, if I understand correctly, we're not counting our green roof towards satisfying any additional stormwater requirement, or are we?
No, we're not.
We're not. So when we're not providing stormwater management, but first of all, we're reducing the existing impervious coverage by 400 square feet. And above and beyond, we're providing a green roof, which will be able to sort of act as a sponge and hold the rainwater when there's a storm, and then either evaporate it, feed the plant, or slowly release it. Let's see. And then here we are. So, oh my goodness, what am I doing? So this is the existing view here from South Delane, and you could see the building behind the tree. Here is a picture of the 3D model in the same location. The tree remains. This is a tree on Spring Street. I apologize, I just don't know how to put the tree in there. So it is removed for artistic purposes, but the tree itself is to remain. So this is the comparison from South to Lane. And here is a view of the 3D model showing the existing building, and a similar view of the 3D model showing again. So this is the one-story existing portion of the building with the proposed green roof on top and the porch in front. And this is the view in the opposite direction, where this is the existing building again with the one-story portion. And this is the new portion of the building. And this is the view of the 3D model from the back. So effectively this view will be from the Spring Street garage. So as you can see here, this is very exciting that we will have multiple locations for outdoor space for future residents. And then this is the elevation, existing building and the proposed from effectively across the street, across North to Lane. And Jim. Okay, now I have to find my mute button, hold on.
And Jim, just as we're starting from the site plan here, and I think, you know, we as designed now, based on the zoning office's kind of new interpretation of, or kind of last minute interpretation of the setback, just want to put in perspective for the members here. The bottom left of this shaded area, Jim, that's the existing porch, and that satisfies the 10-foot setback. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And so I guess our understanding is that the interpretation, which is not how we've looked at things in Princeton before with other setback requirements, but that they're looking to test that at every point of this new building. So as you move to the right, from left to right, parts of it exceed 10 feet. And that's what the variance comes from. Part of the building does, and the existing building is within, closer than the 10-foot requirement, but where that parking is shown, for example, that's slightly greater than 10 feet.
I'm really sorry, I'm not sure why it's doing that.
So
There we go.
So apologies, I'll return back to Jim, but you just want to go through, I guess this is technically a site plan here. So.
Yeah, so I think we covered the general layout of the property, where previously we had 40 and 42. That building now will be part of this overarching building, and before, where we had at grade, pretty well viewed from the frontage of open parking. This will be interior parking within the limits of the building, and we have 9 parking stalls as proposed. At the bottom of the slide here, you'll see that existing driveway entrance is again to remain. And we have some landscaping in and around the periphery on all sides of the property, along with some privacy fencing, as Ms. Kim had mentioned previously. And at the top of this slide, within the rear yard setback, we have basically an open green space area that residents could utilize when they want to get out. They can go for a walk or spend some time with a picnic table at the rear. So we have that, what we feel nicely landscaped, as well as with some low-level bollard lighting sporadically spaced throughout that green space at the rear, so that in the evening hours it can still be utilized, and it's somewhat of a comfortable place for the residents of the building as a site amenity. We had mentioned also too the bike room at the rear, and trash and recycling located within the limits of the building here, and that would be coordinated with a private hauler on a regular basis. So what do we have for the next slide, Marina? Here we have the grading plan. We are including some housekeeping drainage to pick up water from various areas of the site, as well as the roof leader drains to convey that and connect that to the existing stormwater system to limit water that would be discharged to grade and flowing elsewhere. So that's really the main point of this slide. And for the most part, the existing grades of the lot will be maintained, just modified slightly to make everything work.
Next.
Yep. And as I mentioned previously, we're following the general concept along the frontage with increasing plantings of ground covers, as well as foundation and shrub plantings and trees along the street that, excuse me, are more ornamental in nature as opposed to, trees that would grow to 50, 60, 70 feet in overall height, just due to the proximity and to the street, and then the proximity to the side property lines. We don't have significant opportunities on this site to plant large trees, but we feel that we have planted, what we can in the appropriate locations, and certainly the tree removal and mitigation requirement would be met as part of the project. We did include several native planting species within this planting plan. And the HH, Ms. Kim, I think, was referred to. It should be in the planting schedule as English ivy, Reddix. They're up in the double H. So we did have some along the rear green space. We had some climbing ivy along that proposed privacy fence. Next slide. Then in terms of the outdoor lighting, for the most part, we wanted to use relatively low-level lighting fixtures, including bollards in the rear area, as I mentioned, as well as at the front entry drive. And then at the door entrances, there would be recessed canopy lights for the sidewalk entries to those main doors and at those main entrances. And we made a decision at the rear to utilize bollard lighting. We just felt like the feeling back there in that open space would be better suited for that type of lighting at a lower ground level, as opposed to something larger shining up, down from a higher elevation. Plus, there are some openings on the rear facade associated with the parking area too. So there are some, conflicts, for lack of a better word, with some of those open areas along the rear facade. So we felt like the bollards were pretty well suited, for this particular site. But we did try to elevate the landscapes on all four sides of the property.
And Jim, with those lights, I know we often do, but do you think we'll be able to keep them temperature wise on the warmer range,
Yeah, I don't think there's any issue with keeping them in the warm range. Some of the fixtures are slightly over 3,000 or slightly under, et cetera, but they're still within the warm range. So in that concept, I think that's something that, we would suit that intent with our final plan.
Okay, thank you.
But just
right.
maybe a few cleanup items, that Elizabeth had in her memo, if you'd like us just to get to, or Madam Chair, if you want to just go right to questions, happy to do that as well.
Yeah, all right, let's go to questions. If we could go back to anyway, I had a question actually for David Cohen about the overlay and the existing house. And to Elizabeth's point of, is there anything in the overlay that talks about how much of the original structure is preserved? Or I guess I need some clarification.
Yeah. So, well, I was very relieved to hear the applicant clarify that they're not demolishing the building because I agree with Ms. Kim's contention that really the idea was to preserve the building, not to preserve just the facade. But I think that, it would be good for the commission to talk a little bit about some of the material changes and the aesthetic changes to the pieces of the existing building that are being preserved, but sort of being redone. And that's mainly the one-story portion. I'm, interested to hear how the commission feels about going to the green roof, to have the flat roof over the porch and over the one-story section. I think that, I won't offer my own opinions because I'm not a member of the commission, but I would like to hear how the commission feels about that and about the changes to the materials of the outside of those one-story portions of the building as well. I'll just say that I'm really happy to see the way that the new construction is, the attempt to integrate the new construction with the existing construction, as opposed to what we saw at 21 Wiggins a few weeks ago, where there was absolutely no attention whatsoever to how the new and the existing would integrate with each other. So, but I'll let the commission weigh in beyond that.
Okay, well, yeah, more comments, questions about the relationship of the existing building and the addition? Yeah, David? You're on mute.
So if we could go back to that illustration that Marina had put up, I think had a number 18 below it. That might be page 18. I'll start my question while we get that going. What I'm curious about is I can't tell from reading the drawings that we have is the setback of the part that's built above that pitched roof. Right now it's shown in kind of a gray color, a gray diamond shape. Yeah, exactly. How far back is that from the edge of the existing building that's being left there?
I think the plan is to be approximately in line.
In line. Okay. That's kind of funny to me. Let me think about that. Okay. That was my question. I just want to process it some.
Absolutely.
And then I too had a question, what David Cohen brought up about materials. Could we talk a little bit about the materials of the apartment building?
Yes, absolutely. We would like to propose that the new building be stucco. The finish will be stucco. Our feeling is that the original finish on the building was probably stucco. At the moment, the building is covered in vinyl siding, and the garage in the back is stucco. There are multiple masonry buildings around. The crop cycle building is stucco. The building across the street, the former yoga studio building, is stucco. So it seems appropriate to use that material for this proposed addition, and it seemed like it would be an easier way to integrate the existing building and the proposed addition so that they have a continuous material for both of them.
Okay, thanks. Other questions?
I have a question about that. Is there any way to remove a portion of the current siding to see what's under it? To make sure?
That's a good question. I tried.
Okay.
The owners probably are not going to be incredibly happy with me ripping portions off, but I did try, and I couldn't get much in the way of removing the vinyl covering. But I think once the project gets further along, it will be clearly needed to take off all of that vinyl siding. But it seems to be sort of a layer of stuff applied over the existing building.
But will it be too late to figure out the material at that point when you're demolishing or, taking off the siding? And what I'm asking is, at this point, because you don't know for sure and you see all the surrounding materials on other buildings, are you going ahead with stucco?
We are.
Okay.
I guess I don't understand that, we're being asked to review a huge project, and I understand that Marina doesn't want to hurt the integrity of the siding in case the project doesn't happen or something. But how can we leave that kind of unanswered right now? This question, I don't really understand that.
Perhaps we, register your thoughts and comments on that. If you'd like to make that some type of, suggest that there's some type of condition that we look for. I mean, we can certainly do that. I mean, this is I guess a courtesy or advisory. So our goal is to get as many of the comments as we can from, because ultimately, look, we understand the planning board looks to you guys for a lot of these things. So whether it's an official approval or not, our goal is, if that's something you guys want looked at or want justified more, let us hear that and take it back and try to make that happen. If that's the,
Thank you.
cautious use the word historic, but if that's the material that's used, then we hear that and we'll bring it back.
Also, on the Sanborn map, that's what the building is called out to be. Again, we can't say if this is indeed the same building or not the same building, because something is funny with the footprint. But based on the fact that this was labeled as such and all of the surrounding buildings are similarly materials, that's sort of how we're got there. But again, that's something that we can investigate prior to arriving at the planning board.
I mean, we do this all the time in my work, and you get a contractor to, take off a piece of a material to see what's under it and to put it right back. It sounds like it's difficult, but it's not difficult because I've seen it
Well,
done.
I have tried to do it myself with my own
Yourself-
hands, and I
exactly.
wasn't
But-
able to do it.
Yeah, but if you get a
Clearly.
contractor to do it, you contract a person for an hour even, it's not, somebody who has tools will be able to do it.
Absolutely, yes. I
Just because-
tried and didn't
Yeah.
succeed, but you're right, we could get a professional to do it.
Because even if we're advisory, we have to advise on, the historic nature of the building. So we don't know what that is. And it's not something that's impossible. It's very, very doable. It's done every day. And we're not trying to give you a hard time, but when we put our name on on a recommendation, we have to make sure we know what we're recommending.
That certainly makes sense. We just got comments, I think, this morning. So
Yeah, no, I totally
we're happy to,
understand. I mean,
to take them back and try to get as much of this stuff for you guys as possible. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I had another question about the overlay, and this has to do with the density. So clearly, the goal is to get affordable housing and to keep the existing character of the neighborhood. So in this project, is this the maximum amount of density? And I'm sorry if I should know that.
I think that's a good question. The affordable housing overlay specifies no density limit. So there could be more units if we decide to put more units. For example, I don't see anything preventing us from adding more on top of the existing building. We're sort of starting from the existing building and merging away from it. However, we could have put 2 more stories on top of the existing building and probably fit at least another unit without having to provide the extra affordable housing, because with 15 units, you would still be required to provide 3. The choice was made that for us, it was important to start with the low porch and then go to 2 stories, 2.5 stories, and kind of up slowly work your way up to 4 stories. However, there's no dense limit, and our clients were willing to give up the extra unit that we could have put on top in order to make that work.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Other questions, comments about the relationship between the existing house and the addition? Elric, I haven't heard from you.
I still mourn the loss of character in our town. And I know that there's been real effort put into this. It just seems busy to me in a lot of ways. There's the existing house looks almost like an applique rather than the other way around. The density really does bother me. And the fact of all the major trees being removed. In some ways, I'd rather have it be an extra story, but further back on the lot so that you'd have some sort of screening between the building and the street. But the other thing is I'm interested in the pigmentation of the I like the idea of stucco. I think it is appropriate. From what I gather, the building was originally terracotta block covered in stucco. Am I right on that? I'm wondering if you can get some better sense of the original material where the additions were added, where the porches are, for instance. And I do wonder, I know in our office, the younger people can take these drawings and feed it into a computer so that you can actually walk around the building and get a sense of the overplay of one surface with another. To me, that would be very useful in this case, because David's question about how far back that one extension of the gable was, and I gather it's practically flush. That's really making the existing gable sort of a pastiche on this new building, and it bothers me. I'm reminded of the fact that there's the famous story of Paul Tulane, who's buried across Wigan Street, and how having had his application to have Princeton University change its name to Tulane was rejected. He purposely put his rear end facing Nassau Hall, and I'm beginning to respect him more when I see what's happening to Tulane Street. Sorry for that. Thank you.
Elric, I tell that story when I take a tour through the cemetery. I have a question. There was a Byron Ruskin Center, that little house. Is the reason that it's not there is because that will be demolished for your structure?
That's not on this property.
Yeah, that's 21 Wiggins.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the other end. Yep.
It's and right now it's a bike shop. It's been converted to an electric bike store.
Right,
Oh.
but it's not part of this property.
Okay.
But good question. It's on the same block, exactly. But it's very interesting that Elric brought up the relationship between the existing building and the proposed building, because, and especially in terms of the front setback, because what you guys are saying goes absolutely in the opposite direction of what the planning department is requiring. So I think our interpretation was that if the existing building is within the 10 feet from the property line, you could set back the proposed building and still be in compliance and respectful of the street facade as the best you can. However, based on the comments provided by the planning department, to avoid variances, we would have to pull the building more forward, which just seems absolutely going in the wrong direction of being respectful to the existing building. And I think that if that is the interpretation of the affordable housing overlay minimum front setback requirement, people will choose not to get a variance, but will pull building forward. And I think that's just a very interesting way of interpreting this requirement.
Yeah, David.
I just want to try to shed a little bit light on that maximum front yard setback requirement, because I think it was, if you look at these overlay zones, there are certain properties that are not really slated for protection and are set well back. Existing buildings are set well back from the street. And what we were trying to accomplish there was, when those unprotected buildings are removed, that the new buildings would be helping to support a street wall that was more consistent along Nassau Street, for example. In locations where there are existing buildings to be protected, we weren't really thinking about how the new and the existing would be enforced, because most of these lots, the existing building fills the lot. And this is an interesting and unusual circumstance, because it's a sort of double lot with a vacant part of the lot where you're appropriately placing the building. But I just wanted to clarify, I don't think the ordinance was written with a situation like this in mind, and I'll be interested to follow up with the zoning officer. I think it was a decision. I'm guessing it was more of an interpretation by the zoning officer rather than the planning department to declare that this is a variance situation, but it's an interesting question.
Right, but I think moving forward, it would be a very good idea to interpret as Ehrlich would have interpreted, and as we would have interpreted, in complete agreement, where the fact that the existing building meets the requirement and the other portion of the building sets back in a respectful way would be preferred. It's just very strange that the interpretation is trying to push it in the opposite direction.
And it may be, as Mr. Cohen said, that the thinking was more to other properties that do fill the front of the lots more. And perhaps this is an anomaly, and all of our thinking, that a variance makes sense here, that we shouldn't pull this building closer to the street, proud of the, existing building, but for the porch or the neighboring buildings. So I think this is an excellent discussion here, because we were surprised last week about that interpretation to begin with. We set the building back, to kind of respect the neighboring line, as well as the original building, rather than bring it, about 5 foot proud of the existing structure that we're keeping. So again, appreciative of the feedback, and I'm wondering, are we at 4042 Tulane the anomaly, and perhaps this won't come up again, solution in need of a problem, but for this application. But I think we're certainly hearing the comments here that are kind of line up with our thinking, that, there is a conflict between the visual understanding of the street in the neighborhood and the overlay requirement to be 10 feet from the street. That we attempt to respect, but unfortunately at the detriment of a variance-free application, as it turns out.
Right, I would agree. I think that it doesn't make any sense at all to bring the addition closer to the street in this circumstance. And yeah, it doesn't look right. So any other comments, Roger?
Yeah, I have to check out in a minute, but a couple of things. I think I have to disagree with Elric for the second meeting in a row. Although I worry about the density downtown, I prefer density in the central business district rather than elsewhere. And I think that's, supports the affordable housing overlay. I find this corner a little random. And I think in terms of contextual fitting into this area, a building with a little more mass, as is being proposed, or maybe perhaps, I'm not quite sure about the materials and the design yet, but a bigger building fits this corner, I think, a little better than what's there now, which is basically randomly parked cars in front of the house right now. If the cars were absent, I could happily live with the Skillman Cops building being there. I love that building. And if the corner were empty, I'd say, fine, let's let it be. But it's not empty. It's just kind of desultory and a kind of almost a random eyesore. It's sort of like we have a density in that area, in Spring Street, even including the old apartment building, I guess, on the southeast corner. And then it just drops off to nothing. So I don't look unfavorably on a bigger building on that corner because of the current conditions, basically. But I'm not sure this is the right building. And I think I said this before the meeting started formally. I think we're in the, although the intentions are great, I think the affordable housing overlay is sort of encouraging some Frankenstein architecture, because of having to include the older buildings. And we're seeing, even though the Nelson Glass building is it doesn't have affordable housing to my memory, it's attached to the old house. We've seen that now at 21 Wiggins, and we're going to see that here. And I just worry about the unintended consequence of what the ordinance has created or will create. So it's a mixed bag for me. I support the density. I potentially support the larger building in that context, as long as it fits with the Cops Skillman building. And I'm not sure it does right now. But well, I'll stop there. I'll stop on my major ambivalences. And,
All right.
I'll catch you in the car when I reconnect on my phone.
Okay, thanks, Roger.
Thanks, Roger.
All right. So I think let's see. I mean, Ed, do you think we need more comments than that, or do you think, I don't know if anyone else has anything else. I think everyone's commented.
I think David suggested maybe weighing in on the green roofs.
Right. So are there any, I mean, I'm always happy to see ways of dealing with stormwater, especially in this area, because it's really needed. So aesthetically, I don't know. To me, it seems manageable. I don't find that problematic, but are there other opinions?
On the roof or
On the green roof?
I like the idea.
Mhm. So generally supportive, I think. And I do think that, if it turns out the building is stucco, I think that would fit in better than a lot of other materials. So, yeah, I find the setback requirement kind of not right in this situation. Yeah, David.
So, I mean, I would suggest that one of the commission's recommendations could be that granting this variance that zoning has determined is required, is supported by the commission. It sounds like the commission would support setting back even further.
Yeah,
But I think that's a helpful piece of advice for the planning board.
okay. All right.
And
Any-
thank you for
anything
your
else?
support for the green roof.
Oh, sure. Anything else, Ed?
No, I think I've got it. As Dave, the last comment, as David just mentioned, I mean, it may be helpful in the context of not just saying, well, if they need it, we'll support it, but maybe pointing out that they shouldn't need it. And maybe invite Derek and the crew to think a little bit more about the impact of their interpretation on this relatively unique situation, because we may see it again. And I think maybe you could be a little bit more, well, I would draft something a little bit more forceful there, which would kind of support the applicant's position to say, that's not how we looked at it. And it really does a disservice to forcing you to bring the building out and impact the rest of the neighborhood across the street. Let us slide it back a little bit and integrate it better. But if they need
Yeah.
it, you support it.
Right. Well, I agree with what you said. I think that if they slid it back even further, it would help the project, and it would help integrate the addition. So yeah, I definitely think that the zoning officer should take a look at whether, well, I mean, I think he's just trying to go with the overlay, and I think that it's the overlay that has made this determination that maybe doesn't apply to all cases.
Just to stick up for Derek here, I think it was a group effort. They did reach out to the planning consultant for some help. I think it was as likely as Mr. Cohen said, that this lot was not really what was being thought about, and perhaps it's an unintended circumstance. I hope for everyone's sake in the overlay, this is the only one, because I agree with everything that's being said. But I do think they tried, and probably agree with everything that we're saying. But they did reach out to Caton Clark-Hens, who I think assisted with this to get some help, and came up with this answer. As much as I think none of us think it works.
Great.
But I'm thinking, Julie, that perhaps HPC could be some help here to push back a little bit and not have an outside consultant dictate what North Lane is going to look like.
Right. Yes. I think that is great. And that should go in the memo for sure.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you, Ed.
All right. Anything else? All right. I think that's it. All right. Thanks so much for coming in.
Well, thank you all so much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right. Thanks. See you later. Okay. So that's our only application. So Ed, I guess you're free. You're free. All right. We have 2 concept reviews. One is one you're familiar with, Steve Waskow, who I believe, Steve, you were here at the HPC like 2013 or 2012.
Correct. After the
Yeah.
last flood, yes.
Yeah.
So,
And at that time, did we give you permission to move your house?
well, we had gotten to the first part of it, and then funding kind of fell through, and it gave up on the project. And this time I have insurance, and I got an SBA loan, so it's looking much more promising to move forward this time. And I have to thank Elizabeth for sitting in front of my house during this meeting for the last 2 hours, because right over her shoulder is my house. She could have come inside.
Right.
I often, when using the traditional name for the community of Stony Brook, I talk about people living in Stony Brook, and you've actually lived up to that phrase, I'm afraid to say. But
Well, you remember that you and I used to swim at the Y 30 years ago, and during the pandemic, I swam in the Stony Brook next to my house in the spring, because it was like a swim flume. I got in and I could swim for a half hour at a time on certain days. It was great. It was great.
Well, I went to the Stony Brook School for kindergarten, but my parents' best friends were Nan and Don Craig, your neighbors next door.
Sure.
And so I know that area pretty well. I know the deepest spot of Stony Brook is to jump into, but that's on a regular day and not under those circumstances.
Well, Dr. Craig, after the first flood, walked down and said, this is the first time in the 47 years I've lived here I ever saw your house get wet. And that after the very first flood in Floyd, I dropped my flood insurance thinking, well, if I got my toes wet in my television room, I don't need this flood insurance. And so that's why I got in trouble with the second flood. But at this point, I'd like to move the house, and I have some slides to show you what I'm thinking about. I think Max Hayden's here. I'm not sure if he showed up yet.
Oh yeah, he's here.
Oh, he's here. Okay,
Hi, Max.
good.
Guys,
So if I can figure out how to share this with you, let me share you my screen, and let's go here. Let me see if I can go. Let's see. Everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not yet.
562. Yes.
No. I don't see anything. Usually you get a thing that says you're sharing your screen. I don't see anything.
Let me see one more time, sharing the screen. Okay. Is that sharing now?
No.
Oh, shoot. Oh, come on. Oh,
Does Max have it? Oh, I see it. I see it.
okay, now we have. Okay, good. Let me go to full view. How's that?
Perfect.
Okay, technology. So this is my house 14 months ago after I did all the exterior work. I had my holiday card last year. And this is just a recap of all the floods. 98 was Hurricane Floyd, put 4 inches of water in my den. Irene put 5 feet of water in my den and 20 inches in my living room. And in 11, when it flooded like a swimming pool being filled. The water came in gently, rose and left. This time with Ida, it was 7.5 feet deep in my den, 44 inches in my living room. And the water was so forceful, it ripped open my French doors and piled up all my furniture in the corner of my room. And this is some of the photographs. This is the water coming down. It was 44 inches over that back deck. That's the wall that I lost next to the Stony Brook. The structural engineer for my flood insurance company said it's lucky the doors got punched in and that the wall got taken out, because that's what probably saved the whole structure. And then the picture in the lower right-hand corner is myself at 1:30 in the morning, sitting in my car watching the horror show for 6 hours. So, and this next, if you can indulge a minute, I can show everybody a little video here.
you tell he does photography for a living?
Exactly. So this is about 12:30. This is about 12:30 as the water's creeping up. And 10 years ago, I wanted to move the house into the driveway in the last plan. But there's Quaker Road across from my house. That's the water in the morning going down. Came in quick and left quickly. That's my kitchen table. My greenhouse. And that's my living room.
Oh my gosh. So each time you have a flood, you got to get new furniture?
It's all back together. I've already fixed it.
Oh my gosh.
But hang on, let me stop that. So I need to relocate, and what I really need to do is actually move on my neighbor's property, Edwin Bryant, who's been here for the last 2 floods and has been a great neighbor and doesn't want to see it again. And he's been really very generous and made an offer for me to hopefully get a lot line adjustment. His property is 1.52 acres. He needs to stay conforming. So we're hoping to adjust the lot line. And here is my plot plan and my survey. And in the bottom, you can see my house as it exists. And off to the right, you can see where I hope to move the house. And the blue line is hopefully going to be our new lot. I'm going to give him access to the stream to make his property more interesting to him. And hopefully the nice thing is the existing property line. The gravel part of my driveway is in the floodplain, and where I propose to move the house is actually in an X zone outside of the FEMA firm maps. So if the house actually goes out there after, the last 10 years, I won't have to pay flood insurance, hopefully. So that's just where I hope to be. And here's an overview. This is some drone work I had done when they were rebuilding the bridge. And there's my house in the foreground, and hopefully that's going to be the location where I can move my house. These are some drawings that Max did. Here's the front existing house as it looks, and the plan for as the house exists. And then this would be in addition to the back, essentially keeping the front facade facing 206 as it is, but building a new kitchen and a new garage and new bedroom over the garage. And it's just not financially viable for me just to move the house on its own. It's really going to be a lot of money to the point that I need to build something that my retirement money is somewhere where I can have enjoy this house for for quite a while, but still have something that has all my assets in it, as it were. And that's pretty much what I want to show you folks, and have find out what kind of thoughts you might have.
Well, thank you. If we could go back to the regular screen.
Sure.
And thanks for showing us those videos of the flood. I know it's painful probably every single time to look at it. But yeah, I mean, I know that I'm pretty sure we approved this last time, but it seems like this is a better location.
Much better location, and hopefully be up on, proud of the ground, possibly a walkout basement to even protect the property, because who knows what's going to happen in the next 10 years. These storms are being progressively worse, and even though the floodplain line is in my driveway, who knows what 5 years, 10 years will bring with in terms of water in this area.
Well, yeah, and Quaker Road is still flooded. I mean, it's still closed. So
Sure.
That was devastating. I know David took some video too. David Shore had some video right after that storm. Anyway, I mean, to me, this seems totally reasonable. Any other comments? I mean, Elric, you want to weigh in? Or,
yes, go ahead with it. Absolutely. It's, I mean, the next one could wash the whole house away. That's crazy. And it is a neighborhood, and it has its own scale. And I think it works. And I think you're in good hands with Max. So between the two of you, I wish you well.
all right, yeah, David Cohen.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question. You might have spoken to this, but I might have missed it. Are you also thinking as you relocate the structure to raise it up a little bit so that even in the new location, you'll future-proof yourself a little bit if you can lift it out of the ground a little bit?
Absolutely. Max has talked about it. We still don't have the topographical and the slope pitch and all, but perhaps the house might be up on a 5-foot walkout basement. The slope of the hill where I'm going, perhaps the new addition in the middle might be 2-3 feet off. And then obviously the addition of the garage is far enough up the hill that you probably need an arc if it ever flooded with the garage, where I hope to place the new garage and the living area over top of it.
I mean, the reason I raised it is if it does relate to the ground plane differently than it does now, that might be something that the commission would like to comment on a little bit, like how you might, I don't know if you've thought about that, but how you
Well,
might.
I definitely thought, I mean, definitely if the house, if the new foundation is up, extended out of the ground, the house is, I'm going to recoup a lot. I have a lot of river stone and patios that I'm going to repurpose all that stone to possibly do a raised bed around the front of the house to give it, a softened look. So the house isn't looking, the small house isn't looking like it's 5 feet proud higher than it is now. And it'll also, protect the house obviously from further water.
Right. I mean, yeah, David, sure.
Well, if I could be allowed to comment from like 3 different hats, one would
Yeah.
be the preservation training background that, the sitting on the original site is supposed to be the most important thing in the world for preserving historic sites. However, we're going through such climate change and whatever's happening, the river rising is happening, whether it was bad planning for, a century up the river or whatever. Steve's got this problem and I can live with the being relocated up the hill. 2, I think it's brilliant to work with the neighbor and get that access to just a little bit more height. Certainly that neighbor has been very kind and deserves the idea of getting that little bit of stream access. That's very nice. As a real estate agent who's been doing this for a long time in this town, you are so correct in building the house and expanding it and doing those things you want to it, because in Princeton right now, I think that you if you just move the house as is, it would be hard to get a lot of money back out of it when you retire, quote unquote.
Sure.
I think this is the right move. And the last one, just as your neighbor, I never want to wake up, walk down the hill and experience that. I knew that was happening. That's why I knew I was walking down there at first light. That was the plan. But it was just horrendous. I said that when I sent everybody the videos. It was gut wrenching. And I think this is a solution that saves a historic building, and that who knew what we would be thinking this was the way to go 30 years ago when I was studying, the character of the setting and preservation, that this is what we'd want to do. And of course, we have Max, who has a good example of moving his house too.
Yeah.
Well,
True.
I have a skill set right now that I wish I'd never had. I did this time in 3 days, what took me 2 months 10 years ago. And in terms of gutting the house, cleaning the floors, replacing electric, and it's something I don't want to ever do again. So
I don't want to see it again. Yeah. So what do we need to do? This is concept review. So we're just contributing ideas at this point. Well, I think you're, as Elric said, you're in good hands. It's going to come out well.
thank you.
Yeah, I don't see any trouble at all.
Wonderful.
It's a curious house in so many ways. And I actually think you're probably going to discover some better sense of the way the house evolved in this process. So I'm looking forward to those discoveries.
Well, I had to take the front siding off the house. So after I lost the wall, I had to take the siding off the front to clean off the sill plate so that I could jack up the front wall, put it back on because so much plaster had fallen on the sill plate. And then I used my buddy and I used the come along to pull the wall back up onto the and then put a temporary wall in. So yeah, we're making all kinds of discoveries.
Wow.
Just so glad it didn't wash away.
Yes.
I'm just thinking of all the expense you've had through the years, just having to replace a lot of things.
Wouldn't want to wish it on my worst enemy, but
just one question. I have one question.
Sure.
Elizabeth, will you be sitting out front of Steve's house during the whole project?
I hope not.
Okay, good, because my fee was going to go up if you were.
Yeah, it's amazing how there's no traffic there right now.
The best part was during the bridge construction. I lived at the end of because they went home every night, when they were rebuilding the bridge, and it was like, wow, I live at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. It was wonderful.
Right. No more.
No.
All right. Well, thanks so much for coming in, guys. We'll see you real soon. And
All right.
Thank
Thank you very much.
good.
Really appreciate it.
All right,
Thank you for your
bye-bye.
time.
Yeah.
Thanks. Wow. Well, we're moving right along, and the last concept review is 302 John Street. It's rear additions, and I believe it's Ron Berlin coming back. Is he? I think I see him.
Yep, he's elevated, and the property owner, Evan.
Evan and Annie.
Yes, I didn't. Yeah.
I think that one screen.
Hey all.
Okay. I think they're coming in. Hi.
Hello.
Hello again.
Right. I'm becoming
Hi.
a regular.
Yeah, I know. We're just waiting for Evan and Annie. Do you have a video?
Yes. Sorry about that. Let me set that up.
Okay,
There they
thanks.
are. Hello, Evan.
Hi, Ron. It's one half of us. Annie's just off screen. She'll be on screen briefly.
Oh, no worries. So this is a concept review again. So 302 John Street. And well, let's go ahead. It's always interesting.
It is. I know that you've seen the graphic materials, but I can share them, at the right moment. And I guess that's coming up soon. Hang on a second. Yeah. So
Well,
I'm
if you want to, or if
sorry?
you want to preface this with, what you want to
Absolutely.
do.
Yeah, absolutely do. This is a house, it's across the street from the Public Works, the borough, former borough Public Works. It's the last house on John Street before the playing fields. So, and it's a nicely proportioned place that got some sort of sad treatment in some respects before these owners took over. They're great enthusiasts of the neighborhood. They tolerate the idling, I think grumpily perhaps tolerate the idling public service trucks that hang out in the early morning in front of their house. They just like being where they are, and they can speak about that a bit if they'd like to. But as you can see on display is this automatronic, it seems like a baby. And it really is a baby. It's not just a prop. Their family has expanded, and they need to expand the kennel. They need a little more space now. So I've tried to do something that is a modest addition that's like as deeply recessed from the street as I can possibly swing it, that really would help them expand. Right now they have it's a bit of a trailer-like arrangement. I used to live in a house very similar to that. Julie, you might remember. On Greenview Avenue. And so, Evan and Annie, if you want to say a few things before I kind of get into the graphics and show the site plan, if you'd like, go right ahead. And
well, thanks, Ron. Yeah, I mean, Ron, you pretty much summed it up nicely. This really has been a labor of love, and we do look forward to collaborating with the HPC. We've been in the neighborhood about 8 years at 2 residences. This current home is our first home either of us have owned. And like Ron said, this is not a prop, but that's not a bad idea for getting sympathies. But yeah, we really do think that this design is really true to the neighborhood. So we're excited to share it with you.
so why don't I, could I share screen with you?
Yeah,
Let me
yeah, you
just
have permission.
give a quick tour. You gave me permission, and now I will do that. So here it is. These are the existing floor plans. And it's pretty narrow. It's not as narrow as my old place was, but it's a pretty narrow arrangement. This is the John Street end of the house. And the next slide shows, let's do that again. Oh, I thought I could, hang on. I have a way to do this. Yes. Those are the existing elevations.
Mhm.
It's not a nice color right now. They certainly want to change that too. Annie's dad is probably going to be the guy who builds this, which is a kind of a, whoops, sorry about that. And here's the site plan. This is a little bit hard to understand graphically, but not really, because we've just kind of shown the piece that we propose to add. Here's John Street. Here's the parking area for the playing fields and the tennis courts. Here's the existing dwelling. And this is the proposed 2-story piece, simple L, exactly the same width as the house. So the roof pitches will match and we'll have 45-degree valleys. And this is a 1-story balcony. So there's a 1-story piece here with a balcony above it that's accessible from the new primary bedroom. So let's see. And here are the floor plans. Again, John Street at the top. This, I really wanted to redraw this and send it to you, but I missed the chance. But this is going to be a banquette, basically. This is a kind of it's an eat-in kitchen. Essentially, it's an informally arranged interior. And you know that wonderful feeling when you're accustomed to this kind of railroad-like sequence of spaces, when suddenly now you have this view that's partly hidden that beckons you into a space that sort of frees you from that succession of spaces. It's going to feel really good, I think, for them. Anyway, this is their dining area. There's a little mudroom here, a yard entry, as it were. This is an existing Bilco door, and there's a bathroom here tucked into the corner. And on the second floor, this is the new primary bedroom. So they have, you know, two bedrooms for others, another or others. And this is their overlook. They love to like watch the activity in the park and stuff. And now they'd be able to be out of doors and do that and see more of it from a higher level. Let's see.
And Ron,
Yep.
might I add, if I'm sure many of you have seen the sunsets over the park. We got quite a sunset.
Yeah, that's right. This is west is kind of at the bottom of the page, the virtual page. And here are the elevations that are proposed. I guess I should show them at full. There. You all are experienced enough to know to push this way back in your mind. It's way back from the front facade of the house. And we're replacing their existing, you know, kind of hokey metal open work, right? That's what we have there now, with very simple solid columns. And this is the view from John Street, obviously. This is from their side yard. That's the dining banquette. And here's the one-story piece with the kind of overlook. So we're going to match the existing asphalt shingle roofing. We're probably going to use hardy siding on this house. I think their dad got them a deal on a batch from another construction job. This is we're on a budget here. Like
Okay.
I'm really trying to like get the most mileage I can on a pretty limited budget. But we're all pretty happy with it, and I really welcome your comments. And I have some photographs from the street and so on. Maybe it would be useful. Shall I share that?
If you want to.
I want to.
I think if you want to, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's the place to get an idea of the context. It's got a little bit of that stand-alone Edward Hopper look to it, And obviously the addition is proposed for this back section, right back there. So comments, please?
Yeah. Sure. I guess, can we go back to the regular screen?
The regular, yes, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, now it's within my power.
Yep, it's all your call.
Let's see. Yes.
But yeah, anyone who wants to comment, I mean, to me, we've seen a lot of additions that are so massive that this seems very, very reasonable to me. I mean, very reasonable.
And therefore will look good.
Yeah, will look good. Will look in proportion with the neighborhood,
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
You could do wonders with North Tulane.
Sorry?
Yeah.
Say it again. Sorry, I didn't get that.
We've heard enough anyway. It's just, I think it has a modesty to it, which is really very satisfying, and it doesn't overwhelm the original house. It embellishes it without really interfering with the character of a small house. I applaud it.
I'll tell my wife you said so, Elric, because she is really tired of all this like overblown, bloated stuff that's going up around town. And
Yeah, like
what happened to like just modest, modest? Can't we just live kind of modestly? So I'll pass that on. We're going to, by the way, we're proposing, you can't even see this, the front, oh, you can't. May I share for a moment?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Just for a quick moment here. And we're proposing to move this door over. It's in a bad spot, like that kind of waste space. So it's going to inch over a little bit to the left. And this single window will become a double window that allows for a really cute window seat where a small human could curl up. Well, also a dog, actually. But there'll be a pair of windows here that are as much in proportion to these as I could, but obviously their sill height needs to be higher for a window seat. So that's the only, I wanted to point that out because it is a facade,
And in place of the metal work, what's going to be the new railing arrangement?
I'll show you. I'll zoom in a bit. Even let's see if I can go more there. Can you see that all right? I think we're going to have budget to rebuild those steps, which are really crumbling. Evan, do you have a comment, or Annie?
Yeah, they're kind of a hazard right now. We have to rebuild those steps.
Yeah, okay.
They're crumbling cement and they're, all missized and yeah.
And so that kind of open work thing, these would be solid. They're actually solid core, husked columns. So they have a neat appearance, as opposed to solid wood, which checks and moves and so forth, right? You follow me? And there's just this small bracket kind of detail that is also found at the back. Very simple. And that's it. And here's, oh, there's the pair of windows that I wanted to show you. And here's the shifted door. And it's a new door also, by the way. Remember the door thing came up, Elric, in the last concept? So, but this, I had already drawn this, actually. Just saying, proving a little point. How's the door, folks?
I think the door looks good.
Okay. I like it too. And it will, it will let light in at a higher level that allows for privacy too.
Mm-hmm.
They're also across the street from the, the community garden.
Mm-hmm.
Right, is catty corner from there, which I think they consider an amenity. Did you have a plot there, guys, this year or no?
Yeah, we finally got one. We were on the waiting list for like 2-3 years. So this is the first year.
Yeah.
Of course, when you read this concept, we'll want to know more about lighting and color and landscaping and all that. But I think that what you started with is right, very right for the house and for the neighborhood.
Thanks, Elric. Do you have any comment, Annie or Evan, about landscaping? I think they have like very little intervention in mind. Am I right?
So we have, I mean, we would like to rethink the landscaping because right now it's like a few inherited kind of like evergreens, like I don't know what they're called. There's some kind of like Norway spruce hybrid and like a couple raggedy looking boxwoods. So, I mean, we'd like to do some plantings. We'd like to do natives, but honestly, we haven't had a ton of time to think about how we'd lay that out.
Okay.
But the conifers they kind of block the porch, and we love sitting on our porch and, watching everyone go by and all that stuff. So
yeah,
we'd like some shorter shrubs.
Okay.
Like hydrangea maybe, or rhododendra or something like that. Or some mix.
Well, I think
Go ahead.
I think the balcony facing west is so spectacular. I mean, your sunsets must be just absolutely breathtaking. I mean, sometimes I drive around just to get that view. It must be spectacular.
It's big sky
we're
country,
excited.
Julie.
Yeah.
Right?
It's
Big sky country.
right.
It is really nice there.
Right.
Well,
I guess we're just, absolutely on board with all of these changes. It looks good and not anticipating any problem.
good. That's what we like to hear. If we don't know quite when we're going to do this, I don't know if Annie or Evan want to say something about that. They had a question about timing and duration of permission. Did you want to ask that, guys?
Yeah, sure. We, of course, there's a lot of moving parts, as is typical when you're doing an addition. We do understand there's a 2-year time period to break ground, but we were wondering about, what flexibility you have if we end up needing a little more time than that 2-year time period.
Yeah, I mean, I won't go into like the gory details, but this is my first baby, and our budgets are shifting, and we're still kind of trying to assess. We started planning this before the pandemic hit and before we were expecting a baby. So we're really, really, really attached to this plan, but we just don't know exactly what we're a little concerned it might not be on the timeline that we had hoped for. So we were wondering if we are working now to get it approved, but we don't necessarily have, everything in place to pay for it all in 2 years. Like, I mean, we're just kind of curious about extensions and how approval extensions, or, I mean, what kind of flexibility we might be able to have if we need it.
I'll
Elizabeth?
just clarify a little bit, saying
Yes.
they may be able to build relatively soon, but they may not be. So they would really like to get their approvals now, so they're in place. But they're also afraid, like, ooh, if we get our approval now and Annie quits her job and goes to graduate school or whatever, that they would be able to perhaps come to the board without making a new application, but to come to the board on a real agenda, it's an agenda item to request an extension. Is that something feasible? What do you, let us know.
So
Elizabeth?
Yeah. So Evan is correct that you do have 24 months for, the date of approval, but you can ask for an extension. And actually there is an applicant who is coming back to HPC who received an approval 4 years ago, who is coming back. And I had talked to Ed about that. And so what they do is you request the extension, it gets heard by the HPC, and it's pretty, informal. And I think that an application as yours, which is, as everyone on the HPC had stated, is really a sensitive design. I don't think that there'd be any objection for an extension, knowing that, your intent is that you want to do it, but you have some restrictions.
Good. Really good.
Okay, thanks for that.
That's a big relief for us. Thank you.
Yeah. Now we feel very comfortable in pursuing this. Thank you very much, board.
All right, thanks for coming in, and enjoy those sunsets.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thanks so much.
Nice to see you all again.
Good to see you.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Bye, thanks, Ron. Okay, we're open for public comment. I don't know if there's anybody here.
There is one person, and I'll give, his name is Richard Ryan, give an opportunity for him to raise his hand if he wants to say anything, but at this point, his hand is not raised.
Okay. Well, we'll keep that open, and then if you have any staff reports, I guess, real quick, I guess we could talk about our CLG meeting.
Yes.
You want me to summarize it, or?
Sure, I could start and then,
Okay, go ahead.
You
Go ahead.
tag team, because I think that everyone knows that it's been several years that we've been working with SHPO to try to actually get them to accept our application, and we've been working through their checklist. We've had a few of their staff work with us, but they've had a bit of a turnaround. So, but we appreciate the fact that they actually reached out to us. Yes, David.
I'm just wondering, I think Frida may have joined since the last time we had conversations about the CLG status. Could you give a little bit of background, unless Frida, you want to contradict me, but I think it would be great for her to just understand what it is. And
sure.
Appreciate it, because I have no clue.
Yes, so CLG means Certified Local Government, and it's a certification that the State Office of Historic Preservation provides to municipalities who apply and meet their criteria. And the former borough and the former township had their independent CLGs, but once the municipality consolidated, we were required to reapply with the new historic preservation ordinance. And so that's what they're going through right now. And the meeting that Julie and I had with with two members of HPC, they had actually talked about the fact that the ordinance, that the historic preservation ordinance is pretty outdated. It's, it was probably criteria that was set by the MLUL in the 80s. And because, they had been a CLG all along independently, that there was no update needed. But once we consolidated, they really took a hard look and said, hey, listen, you've got to make these changes because this is the standard right now. But they also talked about the fact that, in the 80s, the criteria are much looser, just like, anything else, like, being designated on the National Register, their criteria was a little bit looser too. So everything's become a little bit tighter and a little bit more strict. And so we are trying to meet that criteria. I think it was it the October meeting, Julie, that the two SHPO people had attended our
Right.
meeting because they really wanted to understand how the meeting was run, understanding the role that the commission played, just kind of seeing how the commission functions and seeing if they were a strong or a weak commission and, things that might come up in the meeting. And so they had requested that, and then we had the follow-up meeting with them afterwards. So Julie, if you want to take it from there.
Well, sure. I mean, their main problems are with the ordinance. They don't like buffer zone as part of the ordinance. They don't like, what was the other thing?
Type 1 and 2.
Oh, type 1 and 2. They don't
Right.
like that at all.
Right.
And
Well, they don't not like it, but they said that we can't fall back on the fact that, type 1 was a former township and type 2 was a former borough. There has to be more clarity on how they're defined, and if there's future districts, how would they also fall into what category? So they felt that it was not enough. And actually, so I actually
they'd rather have us go towards one.
Yeah, that's what
one type.
they prefer, unless they feel comfortable that we can actually make that distinction. And I don't know if I sent you a copy, Julie, or not, but I did reach out to Christine Lewandowski, which Frida was actually the Historic Preservation Commission officer for the Consolidated and the former borough for, I think, 30 years or so. And she had retired, right after consolidation. So she actually worked with a subcommittee of HPC members on both the borough and the township when the municipal consolidation came through, and she had wording on that. But when it was reviewed by, I think, planning staff, they decided to cut it out. So I have a copy of that. I'm going to provide it to Ed. He's going to look at it. And I think one of the other things, Julie, that we had talked about is, it's a lot of work. I think that it would be great if we could hire someone to do it, but I honestly don't think we're going to get the money for it. And I did discuss it with Ed, and he's happy to work on the whatever SHPO needs. He said that he'd be happy to work on it and really, try to concentrate on hitting every single point that we can and move it forward.
And the last thing is that, Andrea said that George Chidley, who was the State Historic Preservation Officer, he worked on the Bordentown ordinance in the late 90s, and a lot of it had been the updated verbiage. So part of our problem is that even though the two ordinances were both CLG approved, they were from basically the 80s, and a lot of our vocabulary, definitions, approaches are kind of stuck in the 80s, and everything needs to be updated to the 21st century. So that's basically what they wanted is to conform to, later of what ordinances look like, not from the 80s.
Right. So it's basically a sweeping update.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, David Cohen.
I just want to suggest, for those of you who don't know, or for those of you who do know, we're just embarking on a major update to the master plan. And there is a historic preservation element of the master plan. I think it would probably be a great idea to participate in that process of updating the master plan and suggest that updating our ordinance, our historic preservation ordinance, is important, because when you get something into the master plan like that, I think then funding starts to become available for making it happen, or more readily available for making it happen. So it's just I know that's a sort of a long horizon, and it might be nice to get this done sooner, but at the very least, to do that, we can look at trying to advocate for funding sooner than that. But obviously, there are other priorities, I think, that HPC has for other kinds of consultants. We've talked about design guidelines for the historic district and stuff like that. And so the commission will have to be kind of clear amongst itself what the priorities are for funding, so that if you don't get everything you ask for, at least you get the things that are most important to you.
So David, I have a question for you on that, because one of the things that we did talk about were the design guidelines. And actually Andrea Tingy had said that it's actually good that we didn't go that way yet, because she felt that it was most important to get the ordinance in place and then do the guidelines. So the second question I have for you is the consultant who's going to be working on updating the master plan, they probably have a scope of work already set as far as their contract, right? Which if we had looked into this, this would be on that scope and probably their budget. Is that correct? Or is it something that could be possibly negotiated?
I think it can be, it's still open for inclusion. Really, what the consultant has been hired to do is to revamp our entire master plan. And they're doing a significant public input process about what could change. So except for the one or two elements that have just been updated or introduced, for instance, we have the green building and environmental sustainability element that was just adopted. That's probably not going to be revised significantly. I think there are one or two other elements, like the circulation element was updated in 2017 or 18. May not see a lot of change to that. But I think any of the elements that are old are very much the kinds of things we have told them we want to look at. So I would think that the historic preservation element is a piece of that. And this can, this can include other stuff like suggestions about how to deal with, should individual properties be listed? Should it only be districts? Because there's been some difference between the township and the borough in that regard, and sort of trying to resolve how the historic preservation element of the master plan should be updated to reflect current thinking about that kind of stuff. I think all of that is very much, in my mind, should be part of this effort.
Great. Well, I can reach out to Louise Wilson, who's the chair of the master plan committee. And then, yeah, we could go from there, but that would be great if we could jump onto their process and then get some of this worked out. I would be actually happy too. So
yeah, great suggestion.
Yeah. All right. So other than that, anything else? I don't think anyone from the public wants to talk.
No hands are raised.
Yeah. And so I don't think, yes.
Do most of you take the National Trust Preservation magazine?
Mhm.
There's an article in this new one on the conversion of a school, and you can see the school in a lot of ways reminds me of Valley Road. And
Yes, it does.
if you don't have access to it, I can provide it to Elizabeth. I had pretty much let Valley Road go dormant in my mind, and it's kind of reawakened the thought about possibilities there. So, okay, I'll share that.
Okay, that'd be great.
Thank you.
David
Thank you.
Cohen, do you know anything about the Valley Road School? Is there any traction on that, or is it dormant?
I'd have to say it's still dormant. We're having some very preliminary conversations with the schools about just overall vision for how the municipality can work with the schools to support the changes that they're going to need, both that they already need, but also in light of all the new housing that's coming in as part of our third round affordable housing obligation and so on. So very early conversations. But I can't tell you that there's been any movement on what should happen specifically to the Valley Road building. Which is probably good news, because if there had been movement, it would have been towards getting rid of it.
Yeah, well, we've been talking about that since Dick Woodbridge, because I think, Eldred, you and I are on that committee, I think, as to what to do at Valley Road, and if we could save just the frontage, because the back is terrible, and several people who worked there got very ill because of the mold and because of the environment, especially those who were in the basement for corner.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I worked in the basement.
Oh my gosh.
We all went to the same allergist. It was pretty bad.
Building would have to be gutted anyway, all the systems and materials and whatever, but it is substantially built, and it has a wonderful spot for a green roof. It's got a flat roof to it. But it just, this has a mixed use, including residential space and meeting space. And anyway, I'd be interested in your comments. And yes, of course, I'll take my regular stance and say, whenever you're ready, I'll be the one to move for adjournment.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right,
I have a
Elric.
meeting at 7.
All right, Elric, it's your job. Okay.
I so move.
Okay. All right, you got a lot of seconds. All right, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
We will definitely meet on December 20th. So stay warm. Take care.
Okay. Good night.
Bye.
Good night.
Best
Good night.
evening.